Long life go follow you. Strangers go favor you. Great men go honor you.
Okay. Well, that is part of what we're going to be discussing. Boosting internet access. That's what we want to talk about now. Of course, for those who know, Nigeria gained its first rudimentary internet connection in the 90s. But more than Oladipo, how did that hit you? Was that a good thing, or it was something that we didn't have a choice?
Okay, for me, the story is a bit different from everyone else. We had moved online since 2015, so we had basically worked from home from 2015. Whether it's epileptic or not, we have managed to do that because for the kind of things that we do, excuse me, we just discovered that it was a waste of resources staying in an office and having brick and mortar. So I have a project with a client and we sit in their offices. It could be a project that would be like for 2 years, and I probably will go to my office once or twice in 2 years.
Of everything that we're going to do. Otherwise, what then is the talk about a digital economy if we do not have that? So when I asked Mr. Fakile the other time about the thinking of boosting internet access, do you see the thinking geared towards expanding it to the interiors and the rural areas?
Okay. It's a good thing that you talked about that, and I can... interestingly, I've been at the forefront of having some of these conversations for years. So I might not be able to talk for the government, but I can talk for the things that I have been part of. Excuse me, the initiatives that I've been part of and the kind of things that we were proposing. So the right of way conversation, we've gone so many miles down from where we started from. Where we started from, there were huge issues between who should give right of way where. But all of that is being sorted out because right now, if you look at the digital economy policy, which actually, whether it's going to be implemented or not, it's a different conversation, but that document is rich and robust. And it would cover some of the things that we're talking about, providing that access to the last person around the country. The various agencies and the various stakeholders are actually catered for in the digital economy policy, the policy that the government has launched. All those are already catered for: infrastructure, application, the kind of handshake that people should have from different areas. All those things have been catered for in that policy document. But the question that we will now ask is, do we have the will to implement it? And when are we going to have that implementation done? So those are the kind of conversations that we should be having now, rather than the document is there, it's been produced. The government, there's one application for internet penetration is EGovernment. There's a very robust e-government policy, national policy on e-government, which is being reviewed right now. There was one that was done from, I think it was from 2015 to 2020, and that one is being reviewed now going forward. So
is it being implemented? This e-government talk began since 2008 or 2009?
In some certain ways, yes. And I can say that because I was involved in some of the things that brought about the policy.
Mr. Oladipo.
Yes, ma'am.
Even government matters that say you should go online and do this and do that. Halfway through, they bring in the human being who is going to ask you for bribe. You can never see it through electronically from A to Z.
So that conversation is not a policy conversation.
Yes.
That conversation is a human being conversation.
Which also begs the
always
on that same one.
I always tell people
my
this.
Apologies,
okay.
Mr. Oladipo. On that, how, well, even though it's a policy about the digital space, the digital space will not operate itself. So it raises the question of how it will be executed and by whom. Because sometimes, perhaps one of the issues Alera is raising here is that some of the people that are going to implement this digital economy plan are analog.
Yeah.
So if they do not know, I'm just saying, I mean, I don't know.
But a lot of education is needed.
A lot of, you see, I used a word, and that word is a will to implement.
Will.
By whom?
By the government.
The powers that be.
The individuals who are stated in the plan to implement them. Now, I always say this because I've seen a lot, okay? And from what I do, I see a lot. So, even in the private sector, I have this conversation that you don't just automate or digitize for digitizing's sake. Your processes have to be right first. If those processes are not right, you automate the inefficiencies with it. That's the way it is. And that's exactly what we have. Okay, so I did a study around some of the applications of e-government around various, and I took one example, just one example. And that example is your passport.
I was coming to the passport.
Lovely document. Lovely. You see, each time I travel with that passport, I'm proud to be a Nigerian. So they drop the passport on a reader anywhere. It reads it. It tells who I am. My fingerprint activates it. Lovely document. But the process to get it done. Now we're having a new lease of life in the sense that the immigration people have, for some reason, somebody within the immigration hierarchy has decided that, no, this has to work. So they're attempting to make it work. Are we there? No. But the fact is that there are steps to make those things work.
Are you saying, therefore, that the human being is now removed from the process of obtaining
They haven't removed them completely.
Okay.
But right now, up to a certain extent, you can actually go online. I did this study on the driver's license too. To prove it, to renew my driver's license, I actually went online. Renewal of my driver's license. Mm-hmm. And they asked me if I wanted to do a recapture. I said no. And they just told me to go to the nearest driver's license office. I should pick which one I wanted to go to. I picked the one. And I went there, printed the document, submitted it. And 4 weeks later, they called me and asked me to pick up my driver's license.
Oh. Okay.
So it's working.
Well, it's working.
I wish you to work at the ports as well like that. But don't talk about it.
That is interesting.
Well, Mr. Fakile, there's this program being executed about a joint public-private initiative which hopes to achieve 70% broadband penetration by 2025. That's in the National Broadband Plan. Do you see us on the path?
Well,
why do I read doubt in that way?
He says well, and then he pauses.
these things are easier said than done. it's easy to put together a rich policy document, and like we've been saying, implementation is key. Implementation is key. I will say that quality of service in terms of, what the telcos offer, has been a bit epileptic, Yeah, it's epileptic,
Yeah.
I mean, I still experience that between yesterday and this morning, trying to reactivate my WhatsApp, and that has been initializing and initializing. So when we say, if we're having that issue now, and we are talking about broadband penetration by 2025, this is 2022, the question is, how much work have we done vis-a-vis the amount of work that is actually needed to actualize that by 2025?
Well,
So we're not working hard enough to achieve that.
Yeah, because and again, to make these things possible, the government can't single-handedly implement these things. There has to be collaboration with private sector.
For
with
which reason?
experts.
Yeah, but there are private sector players in this thing. There are internet providers.
Let me
Even
cut in
though
here.
many of them have question marks after their names.
Let me cut in here. I used to run an ISP. Okay, I ran an ISP for many years. Of course, at some point we decided that we're not going to do your typical ISP business anymore. So we moved to being a backbone because we saw a niche in the backbone business where NITEL was meant to play and NITEL wasn't there. And we saw a gap, so we decided to play in that place. But I can tell you that we have huge infrastructure challenges, and those challenges are still there. I don't have to think about, as an ISP, I don't have to think about digging the road, even if I get right of way.
Yes.
I don't have to think about digging the road to put fiber cables in the ground.
Okay.
That's a business for somebody. That's the part of private-public partnership.
Partnership,
Let somebody be licensed to do that.
Yeah.
I know that the Lagos State has licensed someone to provide ducts around Lagos. Beautiful. I love that. So all I need to think about is to say, okay, if I even want to draw my own cables, the headache of duct is out of it.
Yeah.
I just subscribe to the duct and pull my
your
cables in there.
Yeah.
But to take it another level, I don't even have to draw my own cables.
Oh, who does that for you?
There's an infrastructure service provider who does that. So all I need to do is to bother about where I
So
get.
well, this is Nigeria now.
No,
Because
but
it's an entire value chain.
I can
It's
tell
supposed
you,
to be an entire value chain.
it's an entire value chain, and I tell you
Mr.
that.
Mr. Fakile, you own a manufacturing company. You build the road to your factory. You buy your own generator to supply your power. You dig your own borehole to supply water to your factory. That is the country in which we live.
But the
Yeah,
challenge,
that's where we live,
Yeah.
but that's not where we should live.
For
That's
which
what we're
reason?
saying.
For which reason?
This is the reality for now.
Yes, but what
things are changing.
Mr. Oladipo is saying is that, and we see it in pockets of places where the government is laying fiber cables all over the city of Lagos, talking about the smart city program and all of that. But the intention to lay some 30,000 kilometers to add to the 41,000 kilometers of fiber cables all across Nigeria is still on. You may be able to speak to
Ambitious.
that. Okay, and now the constraint of regulation, red tape, and the patchwork of state authorities is an issue that a good number of investors are tasked on. So it raises the question again of, are we really adept at integrating internet access all over the nation?
Okay, I'll look at it in two ways. So the first is, what's the plan? What do we want to do? The other is looking at it from the eye of a businessman. Does it make a business sense for me to put my money in and then wait and see what happens. And then another government comes in, and there's a somersault of policies, and maybe the guy that is there doesn't like my face, or maybe the guy doesn't think that it should be this guy from
This place.
this bald-headed guy that came from should be the one that would run it, and then he decides to give it to somebody else. So that's those are real serious issues.
Yeah.
And I tell people that the problem we have in Nigeria is not a problem of policies and all of these things. We have those things in loads. But it's the behavioral thing to say, if something starts, we should allow it to finish.
Yeah.
And it's not just from the government, it's also from the private sector. And I keep saying it. The same private sector that we're talking about is this, some guy who feels that it's my own person that has gotten there. Is the same one who will go and meet that person and say, don't you think we can do this thing? If me and you will do it together now. And then,
We share.
and you know, so those are the kind of conversations that we should be having. I think we need a behavioral change. If any of these things will work, it's not technology. The technology is
there.
everywhere. The technology is there. I keep telling people,
Given.
see, we come and we talk about technology. Technology would work. Even if I bring two cans together and put wire between them, those things will talk to themselves. Because that's what technology has said it
But
should.
behavioral thing is an issue for you.
The behavioral thing.
Well, Mr. Fakile, while Azalero was talking earlier, it just occurred to me, and this is a fact we all know. In 20 years from now, or 30 years from now, the grandmother was going to be a tapping grandmother.
Sure.
Correct.
I saw a video, I think about 10 or thereabout years ago, of an Asian woman, grandmother, maybe even a great-grandmother, really old looking, and this woman was coding. And so how soon before we get to that point? How realistic is it that a woman in the rural area in Zamfara State will become a tapping?
Why are you picking mother? Why can't it be a grandpa?
A grandfather.
You are a mother. That's what I'm saying. This is gender sensitivity for God's sake, and I'm being accused.
Well, I had to ask the question.
Well, now you've asked, you got the answer. And by the way,
grandpa tapping.
I think first of all, for us to get there, there has to be inclusion. The reason why China, I know, I watched a documentary similar to that where an elderly woman was actually browsing. But you see, the thing I noticed was that she was able to browse comfortably because what she was browsing was in a native language.
Mandarin.
So there has to be inclusion for us to penetrate, the thinking, of people, especially in the rural area, because English can be a barrier to learning. So, and there's this mindset that you are intelligent or being educated means being able to speak in English. And that's not true. So if we're able to, include our cultural reality, and digitize our cultural reality, it will be easier for us to penetrate these people and get people to think digitally. So the problem is the fact that they feel they need to learn English, which they probably are not interested in learning in the first instance, So there's that barrier, there's that language barrier, because there's technology.
You're a solutions expert.
Yes.
What would be, you're a solutions architect. What would be your recommendation? What's our pathway to that?
Education. Training.
But you said that when you say education now, what are you talking about? If that technology is going to be available in their local language, of the inclusion that you talked about, recognizing the low literacy level in the country, how do we get there?
Can I take a shot at that?
Please.
Okay. There's this concept of digital literacy. And it's something that for you to have a digital economy that works, your populace must be digitally literate. Digitally literate doesn't mean you can speak English. It just means that you understand what to do when you get on the computer.
In front of the computer.
Whatever language that you get that done, it's immaterial. Now, I'm involved with the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. That's the body that is responsible for giving out for delegating the internet strings, so .coms, .ng, .this, .that. And I used to sit on the board of the .ng. And one of the biggest initiatives for ICANN today, global initiative, it's called IDN, which is the Internationalized Domain Names, which says that you can have domain strings in your local alphabets.
Okay.
So the Chinese, the Koreans, the Japanese, the Russians, they have IDNs. The Indians, the Indian script, they have IDNs. And those people don't need to learn English. So they can go on the internet and do that. One of the things that I tried to champion is to have the Hausa language has Hausa scripts that looks like Arabic. We can bring that in.
And digitize it.
When you use a computer, sometimes, it asks you to choose the language. So
Yes, and currently you can select Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yes, you can.
So we only have Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa. So just those three.
So we need those three. Apart from the digital literacy, we also need people who would actually take that work. I know a great guy who works from Ibadan, who's doing a lot in IDN and localizing computer usage in the local languages in Nigeria.
Even on for Android users, I know because I use a device, Android device, that I select the language, I select Yoruba. I can use the same keyboard for English, for Yoruba, and I have options to put a dot and a mark. A dot under my letters and a mark
above. So the accent.
So that one is there. But that's for Android users. Of course, maybe we can say Android is the largest of such in Nigeria. But not so for laptops and keyboards, physical keyboards that people use and all of that. And I don't even know if it's for digital keyboards as well.
So give me a business case for it. I can get you people who will do that work.
So, I mean, to make
it's all about to make this making business sense.
A lot of collaboration is needed.
So you are talking about this inclusion now, and government is talking about this broadband expansion plan. Do you think if you're going to, recommend this inclusion thing, how should it be cascaded? We shouldn't expect the federal government to do it all. The right-of-way conversation, for instance, that we talked about, has to do with states. So what role do you think the locals, you talked about, and the translator, what role do you think that they can play, and who should be interfacing with them?
Okay, first of all, for that to be a reality in all of these areas, for the broadcast to happen of this new knowledge, I mean, that infrastructure there has to be infrastructural expansion. The infrastructure has to be expanded. And that's where the government, in collaboration with the private sector, comes in. There has to be a base upon which this reality will be built. The reality of translators working with programmers, working with server architects, because if you don't have that base infrastructure, then it will be difficult, but even without expansion currently, it's just that it's going to be much more tedious to do. I mean, like Mr. B rightly said, a business case has to be drafted, for that purpose. You can get what do you call it? Organizations to offer some sort of grant that would allow translators collaborate with programmers and, foot soldiers who will go into these rural areas to broadcast, this knowledge in their natural
Who takes the lead on this, Mr. Oladipo, is where my question would be.
So who takes the lead? There has to be a deliberate policy to say this is the direction that we're going.
My apologies. I would like you to expand that a little bit because let me cite the example of Silicon Valley. I don't know, I don't think or know if there is any such in Nigeria now, nor is there a think, if there is a thinking around that. Just a second.
There's one. No.
Just a second.
Me, I know one.
Just a second. Just a second.
Thank you.
Yes. Just a second.
Yes.
There is a proposition of the AFDB to build special agro-industrial parks in different areas in Nigeria. That's for agriculture. Do you see a need or a viability of such a thing being built for technology if we are going to take it seriously?
I'm the wrongest person to ask that question.
Oh, really?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. I don't believe in handouts. And I don't believe...
No, not necessarily AFDB handing
so
it. We have a digital...
Say, okay, we want to help
we have a digital...
Just
a second. We have a digital economy ministry. Okay, so if someone is going to take the lead and facilitate that kind of infrastructure, do you see it happening?
Okay, let me backtrack a bit. Okay. There's an agency of government that is saddled with that today. I should know. I played a part in the document I brought that agency about. So, that's NIDA. The work of NIDA is actually to do IT development. Yeah. So all of these things that we're talking about are things that actually should be looked at. So you look at it's a whole value chain like we talked about earlier. So we look at specific parts of the value chains and then bring about things that we can do to attract investment into that side. That's what NIDA should do. Whether that's what they're doing today, I don't know.
It's another matter.
Okay. Now, you're asking about Silicon Valley. We already have one. Yeah. That grew without anybody's intervention. Yeah. And I can tell you that it's still growing. It's massive. Every other house in Yaba hosts and houses a tech company. Whether it's small, whether it has started, whether it's just in one laptop, there's a tech company in every other house in Yaba.
Not even Computer Village in Ikeja.
No,
Computer
Village.
You see, that's selling computers.
You see, those are the interesting things. Yeah. Computer Village is actually your hub for everything hardware.
Hardware, yes.
I worked in one of my former lives. I worked for a distribution company that represented one of the top OEMs at that time, and a multinational company. When the guys came to Nigeria, I was the first Nigerian they recruited. When they came to Nigeria, they were asking questions around hardware and everything. I just told them, the Oibo that came, I said, come, let's go to somewhere that you will see something that you have never seen before. I took the guy to Computer Village. The guy opened his mouth, he couldn't breathe. You could actually find out that this guy was shocked. He had never seen anything like that before, where you can sell computer hardware like you're selling pepper and tomatoes.
Yes.
And the guys were shocked. I told him, I said, look, I know how many computers I've coupled myself by buying components here. And the guy looked at me. So we went back to the office. It gave him a different... So we have various OLCs like that in the tech industry. And what we just need is a deliberate policy to organize and harness the... Nigerians are extremely intelligent and extremely progressive when it comes to things like this.
Resilient.
Yeah. And no, I didn't want to use the word resilience. So it's just that we need somebody who can be deliberate about... But if you ask me, whether government is working or government is not,
the people are moving
People are moving and people are doing things.
Mr. Fakile, let's talk about...
Sorry, just 1 second. If you anyone, anywhere in any part of Nigeria, where we have those technology silos that, such as Mr. Oladipo has talked about and Mr. Fakile has also mentioned, please let us know. The email address is on the screen for you, sunrise@ sunrisectv at channelstv.com. Let's know so that at least maybe if government is not aware, at least let's make them aware. Now that we know there is a Silicon Valley in Yaba.
Yes, let's talk about, I have to be careful because I'm speaking to the experts now. Let me just call it access to the internet.
Yeah.
Maybe you call it broadband or whatever, I don't know. Yeah. But what I'm talking about is all these ISPs who are providing internet service and getting us to pay subscriptions for them, monthly subscriptions and all that. Either the ones where they lay cables or the ones where they give you a modem.
Or the mobile, the one attached to your SIM that you...
Why is it that their service is epileptic? Do you happen to know?
Well,
you both are laughing.
Yeah.
Did I say anything out of turn?
No, you didn't. You didn't. It's a good question.
Very, very, very.
But
very...
let me say it again. Don't let's beat ourselves.
Okay.
It happens everywhere.
Okay.
There are outages everywhere.
The reason why she's concerned is because she just returned from the US. And she's afraid that it doesn't sound what she experienced.
No. You can't be
just
comparing.
Before I left, there was downtime from my provider. There's only one provider that works in the estate where I live. I told you about it.
Yeah.
In Lagos, yes.
Oh, okay.
And for 2 days, nothing. The whole estate, nobody could access the internet.
Was it broadband?
Whatever
Even
band.
if it's narrow band.
Whatever.
Which one is
Whatever
which one is
band.
narrow band?
For me, whatever
Okay,
band.
the late cable.
Let me just speak to you wearing.
That's broadband, right? When they lay cable.
No, it depends. It depends.
It could be fiber optics.
Let me speak to you from the lenses.
I'm analog. Please don't confuse me.
Let me speak to you from the lenses of someone who was an operator.
Okay.
Now, there are a lot of challenges that people have. So for someone who laid cables into your estate, it could just simply mean, it could just be as little as somebody drove on the fiber cable and there was a cable cut. Okay. And it would take them some time to fix it.
My issue is they should tell us.
They should
and
tell
apologize
you.
to us.
That now is a customer service issue from the company that provides that. So that's on the technology matter. That's a customer service matter. So this is a business thing. It's not a technology thing anymore.
The cable cut is technology now.
No, so the cable cut
can happen.
Can happen. Okay, there was a time when a major fiber optic provider so you have in the value chain, there's the external part of it where you bring internet access into the country.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to be technical.
Okay.
Where you bring internet access into the country. And then you have the internal distributive network where you take it to around the country, and then you have the last mile where you take it to the person who is using it.
Okay.
The fastest to achieve that is wireless, which is why it's popular with the fiber.
Those modems.
The modems and also the mobile phones. Okay. So, but where you have cable has this possibility of being able to carry bigger bandwidths.
Yeah.
It's more reliable.
Fiber optic.
Fiber
so
optics.
It's a lot more reliable.
And
however,
approximately how many companies have fiber optics in Nigeria?
Oh, there are quite a number of them.
Oh, okay.
There are quite a number. It's not just one. It's not one, it's not two. There are quite a number of them.
Okay.
In fact, new ones spring up every day.
Okay. Right.
The market is huge.
So we're coming now.
We're coming up.
Small,
the market
small.
is huge.
Small.
You see, the interesting
Gradually.
thing is, like I said earlier, is the business case for it. So a guy gets a license. I got a license from NCC to provide telecom services across the country. The first thing I'm going to do is look at my spreadsheet and ask myself, where do I get the fastest return? And that's where I will go to.
Exactly.
Internet service.
No, I mean, which part of the country will I get my fastest
okay,
return?
Lagos.
That's where we go to. So you do Lagos.
Abuja.
So it's Lagos, Abuja,
Port
Port Harcourt. It used to be Port Harcourt, but Port Harcourt is a bit on
Shaky.
this. Yeah, now. So it's Lagos, Abuja, Kano, and Benin. So I spread that out. Benin, because at least one person in every family is abroad, so they need to
get in touch with them.
So it's funny, but it's a business case.
Yeah. Okay. And that's the reason why there has to be a deliberate attempt to cater to the other regions of the country.
Let's begin to wind down now, gentlemen. A lot of meetings in urban Nigeria now hold virtually. People who want to do business with anyone in the world, in these days of COVID-19, everyone wants to hold business meetings, and they're holding those business meetings virtually and all of that. And it raises the question that my colleague raised earlier about internet penetration. Unfortunately, some of those conversations ought to be had with people, should be had with people where internet penetration isn't as strong. We've had occasions where we have guests in the virtual space, but we're not able to take them as well because of the low bandwidth where they are and all of that. So how do we begin to reduce those incidences? Let's see how quickly we can take that.
Well, we're going back to what we said initially, which is to expand infrastructure. And there has to be a deliberate attempt from the government policy to ensure that the private sector is urged to cater. I mean, so it's not just entrepreneurship now, it's social enterprise, where you are not just doing it for personal gain, you are doing it for gain and also for impact. So we want to ensure that, yeah, Lagos is saturated. You can get bandwidth here in Lagos. It's easy. You can get in Benin. You can get in Kano. But the areas like Akure, like Oshogun, Iseyin, like Sokoto, Zamfara, there has to be a deliberate policy that urges the private sector to cater to those places.
What impetus would you be asking government to provide for the private sector who will facilitate that?
Finally.
So finally, what should the government provide for those people? An enabling environment. So we started with the discussion on right of way and all of that. That's been settled, but there has to be a final solution to that. So somebody wants to draw cables around the country, it should be able to have somewhere that he can go to. My suggestion has always been, and it still is, let's put let's warehouse all the right of ways into one box and then have a policy that this is what is going to go to who within your territory if anybody uses that. That will solve the problem.
Isn't that the suggestion you made about NIDDA?
Sorry?
You don't think NIDDA can do that significantly? Okay,
I think that's more in the purview of the NCC rather than NIDDA.
Okay.
To do.
Well, be Oladipo, a business and management consultant. You didn't tell us the other lives that you've lived. Thank you so much.
Other lives.
Thank you for being a part of our program this morning, as well as Adeshola Fakile, who is a creative technologist and solutions architect. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, and for also reminding us that the grandmoms of 30 years from now are tapping. We'll be back after now.
We have started tapping.